the stress was so overwhelming. I just wanted rest. I wanted to go to sleep. I lived on a lake, and I would think about just slipping out in the boat and tying a cement block to my leg and just slipping quietly over the side just to go to sleep, just to rest.
Real men, raw stories, radical perspectives. This is the voice of authentic masculinity. This is Manhood Speaks. David Cleveland, welcome to Manhood Speaks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This is the very first episode. I've been looking forward to having you on this show. So let's get this show on the road.
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
All right. Tell me, David, where are you in terms of your focus and your goals right now? Where are you in life?
Well, I'm certainly at the latter half of life, and my goals have changed. My identity has changed several times. I'm at a point in my life where I want to give back. I'm still at the point where I can and need to be a productive member of society. So what I want to do is share some of my experience, training, knowledge with men or anybody who could use a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of, I hate to use the word advice, but a little bit of, a little bit of words from somebody who's experienced the amount of life. And I want to share that with people.
Lovely. You mentioned you have had an identity change. Tell me about the identity that you had before.
So in my early 20s, the identity of a father was thrust upon me. And that, that changed my world forever and exponentially. Shortly after my fourth daughter was born, my wife left the household. So I became a single father, and that identity became even more just entrenched. I mean, it became the center of gravity of my life. It was the absolute purpose of every hour of every day was to be a father, take care of those kids. Now, the day came when, it wasn't one day, right? But they each grew up in their own turn, and they all left. And that brought upon me the most significant identity crisis that I have ever conceived of going through. Because as good as it was, right? Because we raise our kids to be strong and independent and to leave eventually. But at that point, I became so destitute of a sense of identity and purpose, even though I was now free, right? Free to enjoy my own time or, change directions. It was a bleak landscape for a while before I got my feet under me. And so, over the next handful of years, I've struggled to reassess my purpose and meaning in life. And thankfully, I am getting to that point now.
That is a lot to unpack there. So let's start taking out one luggage at a time.
Sure.
So you mentioned that you became single father after the birth of your fourth daughter. We don't often hear much about single fathers, and single father of 4 daughters. That must have been challenging.
That's an understatement.
I could only imagine. And I can say that because I too have 4 daughters. And I know it is a challenge with my wife dealing with these four young ladies. I can imagine if it's just me alone. So I salute you, brother. Tell me, at that point of separation, what was the emotional experience? Describe to me the emotional experience that you had now becoming the single parent of four beautiful young ladies.
It was kind of like a nuclear bomb going off,
Mm.
all contained within my head and within my heart. Yeah, it was, it was mental, emotional devastation. And there were days, honestly, Canoe, that after I put the kids to bed and I was struggling with bills and loneliness and all the things that come with it, that honestly I didn't want to live anymore. It was that brutal. And at the same time, it was my sense of responsibility that made me keep on living, that kept my wheels on the track rather than the wheels coming off completely. In retrospect, it was probably the most profound, most shaping experience of my life. My life is richer because of it, simply because I have developed a sense of self-assurance that I probably wouldn't have had if I didn't go through that experience. It's helped me develop compassion and understanding for other people going through the same experience. It's certainly taught me a lot about relationships. It's taught me a lot about developing a maternal instinct to kind of counterbalance the paternal, the masculine instinct, and we have in men. So a terrible experience that I would not want to go through again, nor would I wish it on anybody. But in the end, it was an experience that made me a better person all the way around.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. You mentioned that at one point in time, you did not want to live. That is an issue that a lot of people jostle with.
Yes.
And I want to speak especially on men, because men, the numbers are skyrocketing of men taking their lives. You have been there. What was that experience like in that moment? And what took you away from that edge?
The experience was an extreme weariness, most of all. A weariness of trying to balance all the things necessary. Ideally, a father is a protector and a provider, and then along with that comes the counselor and the playmate, all these things. And I tried to be, like I said, the other things like a mother typically provides, the nurturing, the comforting, and all those things. And I was self-employed, so I had a carpentry business, and in trying to maintain the business and keep the money coming in and balance with what I needed to do at home, I mean, can you imagine how hard it is when you're in the middle of a process of building something and other people are depending on you, and you got to quit to go home to get your child off the bus, or you can't go in that day because you've got one child sick. So just the combination of all these factors are being put together. And at the same time, you've got creditors calling because you're behind on your bills. And the stress was so overwhelming. I just wanted rest. I wanted to go to sleep. I lived on a lake, and I would think about just slipping out in the boat and tying a cement block to my leg and just slipping quietly over the side just to go to sleep, just to rest. And one thing that helped me is I took a picture. It's not a picture. I took a picture of all my 4 kids and set it up on my desk right in front of me with a little sign under it. This is what it's all about. So they already had a disaster happen to them. And if I were to leave this world, what would happen to them? 4, like you said, they were beautiful, sweet kids. And what would happen to them if I left them? So that really is just what kept me going, just kept me whipping my own back, whipping the horse. All right, get up the next day and whatever it takes, do it. And a lot of things suffered. I wasn't able to attend a lot of their school events and, do the things that it would be nice to have 2 parents to do. But we made it through. And now I have a wonderful relationship with them. So it all paid off. Yeah.
That was such a powerful story. I could feel you going back there, and I could feel the emotion of that. And it must have been heavy. I can't even imagine even trying to process that.
Yeah. Wow. But, one just a piece of advice for anybody going through something like that. You just take one day at a time. It's like you bow your head into the wind and you take one more step. And then you take one more step. And you take one more step. And I can promise anybody going through it that there is peace and happiness and rest to be had. Maybe not now, not tomorrow, but it's there to be had. So just one day at a time, my brother, just one day at a time, and you'll get there.
One day at a time. And I especially love how you mentioned that you took the pictures of your daughters and you placed them where you can see them.
Yeah.
And that gave you purpose to live, to show up another day.
Yeah.
And not go out on that lake and take that rest, that never-ending rest.
Sure.
And I think that is a lesson that men can take from you in to find something that would give them that purpose to show up another day.
Yes.
And another day. Because I think that the persons who often give up, they're in a place probably where they no longer have that purpose to continue. There's no need, or they see it as there's no need for them to continue. But having someone who depends on you, as your 4 daughters depended on you, and if you had taken yourself out, just imagine what would have happened to them.
Yeah. Yeah. It is surprising, but it's surprising the power of an icon, like a picture, or a phrase to keep in mind. And that kind of becomes an anchor, just to remind you, okay, here we go. It's like the carrot on a stick kind of thing. Okay. It may be moving ahead of you, but that's the thing you keep reaching for, is that whatever phrase, picture. Yeah.
That's powerful. You said you had an experience, an identity crisis. That you're a father. This was your purpose. Tell me about that identity crisis.
I never realized how important a purpose in your life is. And sometimes when we say purpose, we think of some grand destiny that we were made for. Changing the world, curing cancer, whatever. It isn't necessarily something grand, although it can be, but there needs to be some point of when I wake up in the morning, what is today going to be? What's it all about? What's my meaning for today? And sometimes it's just, oh, this is the project I'm working on, or the umbrella purpose of like I said, I'm taking care of my kids. I'm raising my children. So at the time I did not realize, I was not resentful, but I was kind of chafing against the fact that this is all my life was. I wanted more. I wanted to be this rich, successful, whatever. But I chafed a little bit against the fact that what my purpose was to raise these kids. It was a father. It's only now looking back that I realized that was such a strong purpose that it actually saved me. So when you get to the point where you're not needed, my experience was I wasn't needed anymore. I was still loved. I had a good relationship with my kid, but I was not needed. So just to have that rather suddenly taken away from me, it's like now it doesn't matter how much free time I had or the ability to go explore the things. The fact that my being needed was gone, that was kind of my identity and my purpose. So what do I have to contribute now? Was basically the question. And it's surprising how much of our happiness is centered on what can we contribute, whether it's to the world or to our family or to others in our situation. We need to have something to contribute. If we have nothing that we feel to contribute, we have lost a sense of purpose, of meaning, of identity, and that's when the ground starts to shift underneath you and come out from under you.
Oh, that's powerful. Transition from being needed as a father to this life where your daughters have flown out of the nest. Now you are the empty nest. Men often struggle with transition in the sense of they often tie their identity to their job. And in your case, your identity was tied to being a father. That was your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
How are you managing that transition? And what has been the most difficult aspect of it?
The most difficult aspect, Canoe, is that around the same time as I was experiencing this identity crisis, I was also experiencing a career crisis. So, as I said, I was a carpenter, and it was a good living, and I was proud of it. It's a good, honest, working with my hands, building things kind of career. But I began to be burnt out from that too. It began to feel like just no longer part of my identity was no longer fulfilling. So I kind of had to go on a journey of not only finding a replacement for being a father, but I needed to find a replacement for my career identity. And yes, as you mentioned, for most men, it is very much tied to their career. It may not be the umbrella, like our main identity is providing for our family, but our secondary identity is what we do on a daily basis. I had kind of lost both of those at once. And so what it led to was me training and becoming a life coach, almost specifically to help other people within the transition period find what is important to them. Because at a certain point of life, even though you may have an identity crisis, we're full of an accumulation of values, like what we believe in and what we trust and who we trust. And and the direction of our life, even if it's not certain. There are beliefs that we have retained, and those things can be a wealth of knowledge that we can share with other people. And so that kind of has shifted my uh, both my identity and my career crisis into one. It's now who I want to be, and it's what I'm trying to make my career. I'm not sure if that answered your question or not. It seemed like a long answer, but
We can work with that. You said your career was a carpenter. That's primarily how you derive money to sustain your family.
yes.
What propelled you to go in that direction?
It was an innate ability and desire to work with my hands. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always building things, putting together things. Carpentry is kind of a combination of a utilitarian trade and an art, which is what a craft is, right? It's a combination of art and utilitarian kind of put together. And I always like that. I was an engineering assistant for a medical company, and when I got laid off, that's when I decided to go in the carpentry business, and that was 35 plus years ago. And I struggled with it a little bit, but as I gained experience and knowledge both of the craft and the business, then it became a good living. So yeah, that was kind of a both my grandfathers were carpenters, so it was just something in my genes about putting together with my hands. That was my decision there. Kind of just fell into it.
Okay. If you had a choice, what career would you have pursued? Or would it still have been carpentry?
No, actually, I started school to be a chiropractor, and I was most of the way through the prerequisites and had gotten accepted by a chiropractic college, and in there somewhere I got married, and very shortly after that we had our first child. So that kind of threw the whole thing off the works. So yeah, if I could go back in time, that was my original desire, was to be a chiropractor.
Do you have regrets about not being able to pursue that career?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do struggle with that lack, at least what I perceive in my own life as a lack of that educational professional career that I would have liked to have had. I would like to be right now. Yeah, I don't really know the source of that because I've lived a good life, a hard life. But yes, I do wish I could have been followed that path.
Yes, sir. When you hear the word manhood, what comes to mind?
Ooh. A threshold of when a boy, young male, understands and acknowledges the curse and privilege and responsibility of being a mature man. It's a combination of a self-acceptance of that ability, a self-assurance, and as well as a social acceptance that you've reached that point. And it's kind of a balance, I suppose, between understanding your forceful strength and balanced with restraint, self-restraint, and gentleness. So a man, someone who's achieved manhood has some confidence in his ability to make things happen. Maybe even in his, like I said, force and aggression, but it's all tempered with love, gentleness, and self-restraint. That's what manhood means to me.
Curse, privilege, responsibility.
Yeah.
That's deep. At what point does a boy become a man?
Well, I'm not sure it can be brought down to a point. I think it's more of a process. And again, with me, it was an understanding in retrospect. Once I got to, again, the absolute responsibility of raising kids was, if you want to call it a point, that it was then that I realized that I had to do this all on my own. I was being tested, and the process of a man becoming, or a boy becoming a man, is that boys need to be tested, respected, and accepted.
I love that. Tested, respected, and accepted. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, when boys get to be teenagers, especially late teenagers, man, the testosterone is just pumping through them, and they got all this aggression and all this desire to find their place. And whether they realize it or not, they are longing to be tested, to be put up against something, to be challenged, because that's what they need. They need the challenge to look at themselves in the mirror and say, I passed that challenge, and that comes in many forms. That maybe with primitive tribes, boys were given a spear, told to go kill a lion, or in some of the other indigenous tribes around here, some boys were hung by their ribs with hooks for a day, and if you could endure that, that was your test. Then you were accepted. You've now crossed over that threshold. You're considered a man. And then that's the acceptance part. Then as time goes by and they prove themselves to be worthy, then they are respected. Now their peers and even their elders would go to them for not wisdom, but maybe just learning, to go off it, to give them something to contribute. In our society, that's not done like that. So we are struggling to find out how can I be tested? And the unhealthy side of that is when boys commit crimes, or join gangs because they're longing to be tested and respected by their peers. And that's an unhealthy aspect of it. So yeah, I think we as a society need to understand that boys need to be tested. That's what combat is all about. That's what sports are about. It's overcoming that in a healthy manner.
That sits well with me. I understand that. And I think that is what society is missing. What do you suggest society on a whole should do in order to get boys through that process of being tested, accepted, and respected, to prevent them from going on that negative spiral?
In a word, just understanding, acknowledging and understanding that this is the course of manhood. there's a lot of negative sound bites like toxic masculinity and,
Mm.
you know, girls and boys are the same and they can change and they, both of them are, both of them have the same path in life. They do not. You're fooling yourself if you think that. Letting boys be boys, going through this process of letting their masculinity be expressed, letting their aggressiveness be expressed within a healthy environment.
Yeah.
And accepting that. If we can accept that as a society, then we will simply be much healthier. And obviously the same goes for girls, right? They have their own path. But as far as boys, we need to stop. We need to stop gentling boys before they've had that experience of being tested. Once a boy is tested and has the respect and the acceptability, then they can go back and feel they can explore. We can explore our vulnerabilities. We can explore our emotions because we're secure now, right? Once you have that security, then we can recite poetry and do all these softer things because we know. So as a society, let the boys be tested and respected as a boy without repressing it. Because when you repress that masculinity, that's when it comes out in an unhealthy manner. That's, like I said, when boys become bullies, when boys join gangs or whatever, that's the unhealthy response to a masculinity being repressed. Let them explore it, give them places to explore it, and applaud it. Applaud the a healthy expression of young masculinity. Give them parameters so that they know what's healthy, but don't overprotect, don't over gentrify their masculinity before they have security within it.
That's good. Where does vulnerability fit in that concept of masculinity? And I'm speaking about boys and men.
Early on, vulnerability is seen as weakness. Blanking out here. We are all built. God made us all with emotions.
Yeah.
Emotions make us vulnerable. And to pretend that we're not isn't tough. It's stupid. It's denying reality, which is just stupidity. Men, boys, we are vulnerable. Our egos are fragile. All it takes is a disgusted look from a woman, and our ego is just broken down to nothing, right?
All the way down.
Have a woman laugh at us. Oh man, now we're sunk. So we need to understand our vulnerability. We need to understand that we are emotional creatures. What we need, and this is part of the testing process, is we need to not be led around by our vulnerabilities. We need to not be led into weakness by our emotions. We don't want to be, flighty, just to be blown around by the wind. That's the point of strength, is to maybe when emotions want us to go cry in the corner and suck our thumbs, no, we're gonna make this happen anyways. So the other side of strength is vulnerability, understanding it's there, just not letting vulnerability dictate our lives, and that is strength.
So it's about experiencing the emotions, allowing yourself to experience the emotions, but not allowing the emotions to control you.
Correct.
I like that.
Correct.
Tell me something about your experience. You raised 4 daughters. How did that experience affect, or what effect did it have on your manhood and your masculinity?
Well, first of all, it made me understand girls a lot better.
Okay.
It brought out the maternal instinct, the maternal training. And I think what's good about all that is it made me see the balance. Understanding feminine and maternal energy is what allowed me to now understand and discern the masculine energy. If I only experienced masculine energy, I wouldn't be able to define it because I'd have nothing to compare it to. So understanding girls and their process made me a better man.
Made you a better man.
Yeah.
Tell me about your models of manhood. Where did you obtain your sense of masculinity?
Compared to, you say, young mothers?
No, where did you experience your sense of guidance for your manhood, for your masculinity? Where did that come from?
Honestly, a lot of retrospect. I don't know that I understood it at the time. I was just navigating. I was just doing what I had to do. Which, on a tangent right now, what I just said is important. You saluted me in the beginning for being a father of 4 daughters, and I want to say that what I did was nothing noble. It was just what I had to do. I just did to do. And that may be one of the chiefest definitions of being a man. You just do what you have to do. So yeah, back to my, my experience. I didn't do it all well. I didn't do it all perfect. It was like walking through fog. Now I had a good experience with my own mother, and my own father. They were good parents. So I certainly had a good foundation of what being a good parent was. And that helped a lot. And I had friends who were also good examples, and maybe my advantage was I was able to learn from other people and try to use those learnings in my own life. But yeah, most of it was all understanding in retrospect.
Wow. Let me see. So you are now in this phase of your life where you're a life coach. Why have you gone in that direction?
Some years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine who was distraught over where she was in life. And she said, "Dave, you ought to be a life coach." Life coach? What's a life coach? I didn't know life coach was. So I did some research and I realized, yes, this is exactly what I want. A life coach, as opposed to, say, a traditional psychotherapist, isn't dealing with serious mental illness. A life coach is just helping people find some clarity where they are in their life. And the difference, the analogy I use sometimes is like a therapist is someone like a mechanic, where you take your car in and he lifts the hood and says, "Oh, you got a a blown head gasket, and it's going to take this much time to fix it. Whereas a life coach is somebody who finds somebody who went off the road into the ditch, and they help push the car out.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, to share with discouraged people or people struggling with confusion, to share with them not only my experience, but the things I've learned in my training to get them pushed out of the ditch and find their own meaning, find their own identity, find clarity in their life. That is now the most fulfilling thing for me to do.
That's good. I think it is rather interesting how your purpose has progressed from being a father, a carpenter, and now you're in the direction of being a life coach. I think that's a very interesting story and a powerful one at that.
Yeah, thank you.
How do you think you can impact other men by going in this direction?
I think I can help them clarify masculinity, their own purpose, their own sense of contribution, and even what it is to be a man and how to relate to women.
David, if you had to share a message to the man who is listening to you right now, a man who is struggling, financial issues, family issues, and any issue that comes up, what would you say to that man?
First of all, there's an entire world, a wealth of information that can be looked into. My generation growing up, and my parents, they didn't have the internet. And right now there is an abundant source of encouragement, even on the internet, on YouTube. So if you're stuck, reach out to a mentor, reach out to another person. It's difficult for a man to do that. That is one of our chief disadvantages. We do not want to seek help.
Okay.
But if you consider it, instead of a man in a weak place searching out somebody in a strong place to give them encouragement, if you consider it looking for a brother, and I know, Ken, you were in the military, right? And so you probably had all kinds of support from your brothers. This is what manhood is. You don't have to be alone. You can reach out to a brother who's not going to judge you or look down upon you, somebody who's been through the same experiences you have and will only be interested in encouraging you as a man, and sometimes that encouragement takes form and bam, 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 wake up, you knucklehead. And sometimes, look, my brother, I have got nothing to offer you but a hug and kindness. Both of those things are good. But reach out.
That's powerful. David, it was a pleasure having you on Manhood Speaks. If people want to connect with you, where can they do that?
I am on LifeFullosophy.com, or my email is lifephilosophy@gmail.com. So Life Philosophy is, you'll probably see it in the spelling if you put it up, but it's the philosophy of a full life. So it's the spelling that represents that.
I will definitely put it in the show notes as well.
Thank you, Kenu.
It was a pleasure, David.
Pleasure was mine. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Take care, my brother.